I would like to deepen the very 3D immersion mechanics. In fact, I would form the question like this. You have explained the function of immersions in general. But for people who don't know yet, this technology is also applied to enter the terrestrial experience, right? There are many starseeds that are in 3D and who have entered with this technology. They look and feel human, but they are really projecting from their immersion cameras. Could you explain how exactly this is done? Step by step.
Yes, although all immersions, including those, are based on the same principle described above. Detection by means of highly sensitive interferometers that map the individual's brain and determine which frequency signals are necessary to create the desired stimuli that will create the experience. Each group of neurons will have an energetic frequency identical to a frequency star map. It is the same as with a spaceship in hyperspace. There are no distances, only energetic localizations in a field that is ether. So a concordant signal passed through hyperspace with transmission technology by muons can pass the signal from the computer of the immersion pod in Tolkal City in Temmer to any place in the universe equally. Energetically, the pod signal is sent by continuous muons, and it will only affect the brain that is concordant with the signal no matter where it is. In other words, from the point of view of these muon gravitational signals, there are no distances, and it does not matter if a person is in the immersion right by the pod or 440 light years away, as it does not matter for a ship to jump from any point in the known and mapped universe to another. I hope I have answered the question. I must go step by step, describing the hardware as well. Nothing is transmitted by radio or microwave, but by muon gravity signals.
Here's where we get into the stasis bodies. We are going to come back into the Walkins situation here very shortly. What I have noticed as well too is that there are Walkins that basically have bodies in stasis. Now I have talked about this years ago. I have talked about it when I was channeling Adronis as well too. Okay, but it's like looking at these little pods, and inside these pods are stasis bodies. Okay, what will happen is that there's advanced technology quite commonly found on spacecraft where they will have disembodiment chambers, stasis chambers. And there is basically abrupt frequencies that are being blasted in this pod that basically induce the host from being disembodied from the soul. Now that body is still alive as well too, okay? So this is where it gets kind of interesting. It's like crossing in between dimensions. So again, that host leaves that window in that dimension, comes out the other side, and here's the earth, and here's the body that they are occupying upon the earth. So that stasis body is completely intact in that disembodiment chamber. So basically that body, it's almost like being in a comatose state. That body is still alive, but it is very much in a comatose state, and it remains that way. And the technology there is keeping that body alive. Okay? So that soul that disembodies from this particular body, let's say it's on a spacecraft, okay, goes through the dimensional opening, dimensional fabric, comes to Earth, reaches an agreement with an old host The old host leaves, the new host comes in, they have no awareness of their family, their friends, anything that represents the past instances pertaining to that old host's life. Completely blank slated. Okay. Now, if the host is willing, the host may give them information about their family. If that old host is willing to help out with the new host, it all depends. The majority of the people that I have talked to have not had that kind of association. It's very rare. Okay, for an old host to say, "Oh, let me help you out. I'll tell you that this is what my mother is like. This is what my father is like," and they'll get like telepathic transmissions. Right? They'll get information, they'll get intel to get about a vague idea about what's happening. Some old hosts are generous to do that, but most of them do not do that. Okay? Most of them just basically go off into the waiting queue. Okay, body's yours. I'm just going to observe from my waiting queue. Have a blast. Okay? So this is the nature of stasis bodies. So it's very common that we have agents. Okay, that we have officers, that we have specialists that basically volunteer themselves on board spacecraft quite often. It's what I refer to as arc vessels or arc ships. Okay, all that means is that these are specially designed ships that basically have these pods. Okay, and again, the entity in question goes into the pod, fills up almost with, like you could say, amniotic fluid. It's almost like an amniotic fluid that comes into the stasis pod. I've gotten visions of it. And again, they're just being blasted with frequencies that are assisting in the disembodiment process and also keeping the body comatose. As the body again goes comatose, they disembody from that stasis body. They come into the new body. And again, they just try to fit in with the Earth plane.
Sorry, I interrupted you. You were asking about the pods.
Yeah, I wanted to go deeper into that because it's very interesting. So you colored them in your book. You used colors, but you told me they were more like grayish,
Right.
which is so interesting because I told you about my own pod experience.
Yes.
And other like clients that have seen these too or have experienced these and that have come through in regressions as far as like pre-birth kind of like areas of pre-birth. So
Right.
what came through in my regression was that the way you drew them here with the color, right? These were our original soul pod matrix soul pods, where we chose to anchor ourselves into these pods and then project our consciousness down into Earth as if it was a game, a school to come for learning lessons and just experiencing and playing with each other and soul growth, all of those kinds of things that we're told that Earth is, right? And that used to be true before it was hijacked at some point. It was hijacked. And I think that's what actually turned the pods like gray, like they're gray now. They're not colored like they used to be. I think this is an actual memory for you with these colors.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Because the practitioner that I had my regression with, she actually received more information after my session. And the way she's had someone draw it since, and I'm going to show you because it's very similar to the way, it's a little different, but similar. Like the color is similar to that blue.
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like chrysalis pods that we use to project our consciousness down into here in the organic matrix system. But then at some point, they were taken over and the energy is now gray, like you saw it.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because I saw a petri dish, something that looks like a petri dish.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Bunch of them?
Yeah. Yeah. So you actually saw it like a petri dish. And what was it like for you to be in that space? What did that feel like?
People say it was gray, it was black. I saw absolutely no color. There was nothing. It was absolutely nothingness. There was nothing to see. Total loneliness.
Like a void space? Like when people describe, no, different?
Nothing. I cried out, I'm over, somebody see me, I'm here. And there was just nothingness. And that's when that being, whether it was AI, which I kind of think it was probably AI coming to, I don't know. I didn't see them, but they lifted me up. They didn't say anything, and I didn't feel any warmth from them. I was taken, and here you are. And then you start the whole thing.
Yeah. That's what I was feeling, because when I saw it, and you can tell me if you don't want to talk about this, because I know like you feel a little uncomfortable maybe. But when I saw the pods that I was seeing, they were being monitored by Greys. And it wasn't like they were evil or anything like that. It was just their job. Like they were just monitoring the pods, making sure everything was running okay. It was just very, like cut and dry, very kind of scientific. Like that was just their jobs. That's what they were there to do.
Right.
But so that's what I saw. And then what came through later, was that was the hijacking, like the alien presence was the hijacking itself. Right. So yeah, so it's interesting that you say that there was no feeling from them, because that's what they're known for. Like there's no feeling, there's no heart connection. It's just
and to be in a petri dish sounds very scientific in a sense of like their experiment.
Right. Yeah.
We're talking about our souls being so ancient and so precious, and they're kept in a container. The container usually to me looks like a cage. Sometimes it looks like a cage. Other times it literally looks like a little glass thing. And then other times it looks like it's kept in a cave somehow. I've seen beings like dragons actually guard these cages or caves where a soul can be kept. So it's very well, depending on how much they want to keep you asleep, because they're so scared that you might have a huge influence on others when you find this out and when you start taking your power back, because taking your spark back is literally taking your power back. People have told me, especially people who've had a session like that, okay, now I feel like I'm back in my power, that I can actually rise up against all of these BS restrictions and speak up again and all of those things. So it's a massive thing that happens when you take your spark back and when it's freed as well. So for some, it looks like a cave. It's guarded sometimes by beings. Sometimes I don't see what type of beings those are, but I have seen dragons for some people, absolutely. Sometimes it literally looks like a little cage, almost like this. It's like kind of like a larger cage. And then they're prodding through that with sticks and kind of prodding the soul with sticks, so that really goes into the sacral area, is where I usually felt it for my soul. There's something about our sacral and heart area. Sacral is like the womb, the creation, creating a lot of things. So they're kind of like prodding it through those little cage-like structures every time you are in danger of awakening, and also awakening a lot of people. So especially with me having my channel, even though supposedly not that many people watch it, I am kind of reaching the people that it needs to reach, right? And so there's always a prodding going on. And the more I wake up and the deeper I go with these matters, and when I'm really attuned to it, because you can't be attuned to it 24/7, otherwise you would literally turn crazy, But whenever I do tune into it, it's always like that prodding through those little cage thingies, and it really goes into that womb creation area. They're doing the same now with one of my clone bodies. So I do think some of us have a few clone bodies, either on Mars, on other realities. I know one of my clone bodies was definitely in this reality that was similar to Earth, but it was floating around. So it's like kind of like a planet or star where there's not much gravity on it. So I knew it was okay. Earth. So soul is kept maybe in something like a cage even. And then where else was the soul kept, what I've seen so far. So it's just kind of all of these different structures and institutions. So it could be in an actual pyramid. It could be in this cage thing that's well guarded by other beings too, by the way. And they all look like AI beings, like not even necessarily reptilian, but just strange. Okay. And then some are in these caves guarded by other beings. And then others are something like a glass container too, that kind of needs to be like literally shattered. And sometimes that glass container feels like an ice block to me. So it gets it kind of like all merges into one when it gets to those sessions as well, because like, am I really working with glass, or is that like ice? And I'm trying to break through the ice and get to the energy body and the soul too. And so why would that be? Because they don't want you getting your soul, but you have free will. So you are able to get your soul, especially if you know someone who can get your soul, or if you are attuned to that yourself, if you're kind of woken up to the fact that your soul might be hidden somewhere because you sold it off in these previous lifetimes, right? And you could have just sold off certain pieces of your souls too. You know, let's just say you were around as a king or queen in the medieval ages. They gave you more power in exchange for an actual piece of your soul. And though sometimes I do these sessions where people only have like 10% of their soul in their body, or 20% of soul in their body, or 5% of soul in their body. And then like we have to retrieve a huge chunk back into your energy body, because you need to get that all back. And those are pieces that they could have sold off in previous lifetimes, you know, when they were in their ego, when material things were more important to them, when they just forgot themselves in the game over and over.
So one
again.
of the cool experiences, this is one of the neatest, like most interesting OBE experiences I've had in years. EDON telepathically talking to me, right? My last astral projection experience with him. And he basically said, do you have any particular question or anything that you're interested in finding out? And then I basically, the first thing that came to my consciousness in that moment was, I'd love to see a different aspect or something else within the astral structure that I haven't experienced before or witnessed or seen while out of body. And then it's almost like EDON could just kind of like go into the Akashic records or something and see all of the things I've experienced through my life experience and everything I've done, and then be like, oh yes, okay, so you haven't seen that. You know, that's kind of the vibe. It was really cool. And then it just everything just kind of like goes into void. As you know, all of you astral projectors, you hit these astral voids and you transition to different reality shifts and different realities in general, or go to different dimensions or planes. And so you go through a short void, and it's almost like being transported to a different location. And then all of a sudden, I'm just on something that looks just like a huge... there's these big windows in front of me. I'm standing looking at all these windows. I can see a bunch of stars, galaxies through those big, huge windows, high, tall ceiling, and immediately I felt like I was on just some huge space station, or like a galactic ship or something like that. And as I turn to my left, I can see how it slopes down, and there's like all these different, it's like terraformed, right? It slopes down to the back of the ship, and there's all these like different steps of individual things, like food, and you can see like a little center, like a shopping kind of center, and then you can see like another part of that slope that was like houses and like stuff like that for beings, and then I follow EDON, and we go down this long hallway, and then we go into this big area where there's all of these large individual pod-looking things, pods basically. They're see-through on top, and you can look in, and you see beings. You see just just be, any kind of being. There was different kinds of beings, human-looking beings, different types of looking beings, kind of humanoid, and there were 12 beings laying down in a circular formation, and all their heads were like, pointing towards the center of the pod, and they were all hooked up to like wires and all kinds of things. And I'm like, and there's like, each of these large pods, there's 12, or at least it looked like 12, but I'm pretty sure it was 12 because it was a circle, and it would look like a clock, right, with like 12 numbers, and how everyone was positioned like a clock. So it was definitely 12. And then I was looking at everything, and EDON was explaining, communicating, of course, telepathically, that these are all just soul groups. And they exist in that dimension, but they are as a group, as a soul group in a kind of a soul pod, right? They are astral projecting part of their consciousness, or a lot of it, projecting it into other bodies on other planets and all kinds of things. And he was saying how they weren't all projecting their consciousness to just like Earth or something. Like one of them would be going there, and another one would be like at a different planet, or a different place in the astral structure and that kind of thing. So it was really mixed around. So I don't know why. It's kind of confusing. It's like you figure if it's a soul pod, like it's like, they're all 12 of these beings are projecting like to the same place, right? So I was trying to figure that out. I didn't figure that out. I apologize, but that was my question at the time. It's like, why are they projecting to different areas, different places? So it didn't make any sense to me. Again, something to, further investigate and research and all of that. But very interesting, very interesting. Also, he was talking about how these soul pods and these 12 beings that are in these pods, how they've signed certain types of soul contracts. I can't remember exactly what I heard, but it was something like galactic creator contracts, or galactic creator soul contracts, or something like that, something along those lines. Again, I'm just trying to express all this stuff the best way I can. I'm sure that after I do this video, I'm remember other details and things. Also, here's another example of soul mind wipes, right, from previous experiences. One is this, and this might be a little controversial, but I do believe there's a certain percentage of souls who are astrally projecting into a human body avatar, in this reality, and their actual body, their soul is like I said, it's more or less projecting into this body, but their actual body is in a different reality construct, and there's certain technologies in those particular advanced reality constructs that offer, it's almost like a vacation package where you choose an Earth human being experience for 40 years, for 80 years. It's a package that you buy, and you pick what you want to pick, right? The main components to your experience here, like the parents, the siblings, where you live, and all these kinds of things, for the most part is selected ahead of time. And so they get their consciousness, literally like the movie Avatar, where the guy's consciousness is in a consciousness projection unit in a separate location, but is being projected into the avatar, right? And so there is that also. So there's other videos on YouTube that have come out over the last couple of years about pods, and so there is some truth to this. But by no means it's not everybody. It just depends on what particular reality construct or world, realm where you originate from before this human body experience. Like, I'm a walk-in. I've talked about this before in some other videos. I know 100% now that I am a walk-in. And so I do not, I'm not projecting from some pod, you know what I mean? Like from another reality system, or reality construct. I know that. But there are some people who are doing that, and they get mind wiped 100% because, you can't go into a vacation package that you're picking to have that, experience, knowing that you are actually, in a pod somewhere, so that's my viewpoint on that. I hope that helped, guys.
What's the other one? We're going to talk about immersion pods. The Tibetans talked about the immersion pods, the Pleiadians, to get it being a star system around the Pleiadian constellation in there. So they talk about these immersion pods and how that they're, you can go to Cosmic Agency and get a lot more information about immersion pods and how they're used and why and all that. But apparently a lot of the ET races use immersion pods where they put the body, their original body, their ET body, in the pod, and then they do the consciousness transference. They have an entire protocol with program and agreements and I don't know. They do something. So it's designed so that the consciousness, when it transfers into the physical world, it lives one life. Does it just live one and then go back to the body, or can it live a life on the physical plane, in the human body, on Earth, live and die here after 80, 90 years, and can it get caught up in between lives, or will it go right back to the immersion pod? I don't know. Seems to me that you wouldn't want to get caught up in the Earth experience and fuck the immersion pod body, and you want to reincarnate. Or you get addicted. Can you get addicted to the reincarnational experience of being an Earth human on Earth? Oh, I got more things to do on Earth. Oh, I have family. Oh, I have love. I haven't finished what I've started. Oh, God, and you reincarnate. Is that what's going on? Or when you drop dead, if you were in an immersion pod, you drop dead here, you go back to your other body that's in the immersion pod. You wake it up, or it wakes up, and then you're good to go. Is that how that works? I don't know. I wish I did. Yeah.
So firstly, I want to talk about what I call soul pods and shadow pods. So souls exist in a timelessness, but we sign up for incarnational experiences where we voluntarily self-limit in order to try to feel what would we look like, what it would feel like to forget temporarily that we are actually bite-sized pieces of God, that we're holographic fractals of Source. So we sign up for this experience and we voluntarily self-limit to kind of generate that experience. I believe as well that not all souls come to planet Earth. Some souls, incarnate on different planets, and some go into different dimensions where there's a totally different kind of frequency and a whole different kind of density or lesser densities. So we're not, all the souls that God creates don't actually just come to planet Earth. They're scattered throughout the metaverse as far as I'm concerned. So in the throes of incarnation then on this planet, the trick for us becomes, can you remember that you're not actually separate from anybody? And you're not actually separate from nature? And you can never be actually separated from God or from Source itself. That's the mega mission of every single one of us, to try to remember that we're not separate from each other, or from nature, or from God. I also believe that we do not come down here as individuals. You know, when we come, for instance, to incarnate on planet Earth, that we don't come as individual souls. We come roped together in what I call soul pods. And then we move from incarnation to incarnation as a group, you know, this soul pod. Now, from lifetime to lifetime, from incarnation to incarnation, we're going to change roles, relationships, gender, IQ level, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, religious affiliation. We're going to change all these accidents of incarnation, you know, in order to be able to have a fully human experience. You can't have a fully human experience if you're just born, you know, into one gender, playing one role with a particular kind of an IQ in a particular socioeconomic group, you know, of a particular ethnicity and a particular religious affiliation. You're getting a tiny, tiny, tiny slice of what it means to be human. So from lifetime to lifetime, we experiment with all of the other ways of being. But it's the same soul pod that moves from lifetime to lifetime. And the object of the exercise is to help to create some kind of a drama which affords every single member of the soul pod the ideal opportunity in order to learn what they want to learn, the virtue or the virtues that they've chosen to work on in a particular incarnation. So maybe for one lifetime you decide, I'm going to focus on developing compassion. Another time it is, I'm going to focus on developing courage. Another time, patience. Another time, integrity. Another time, forgiveness. And so we have different kinds of ideals as we incarnate each time. But I also believe that as well as being part of surrounded by a soul pod, I think we draw other people from what I call the shadow pod. And the shadow pod are the people in our lives that really, really test us. You know, sometimes we regard them as enemy figures, whether they're members of our family, you know, or living in the same village or at the other side of the world. So I call those people, you know, members of the shadow pod. And every one of us is part of the shadow pod for some other group. So I believe that we need weeders and fertilizers in our psyches and in our spirituality to make our souls advance. So the fertilizers are the people who love us unconditionally, and they're really good for us. But if we only have fertilizers in our life, we all become complete narcissists. And so we need weeders in our lives as well to point out our inadequacies. And this for me is why Jesus said, you must love your enemies. He's not talking about lying down and letting people walk all over you. What he is saying is recognize that you've contracted with each other, that these people are a part of your life to test you and to weed your life. And so in some senses, our enemies often are the best teachers that we have. So that's what I mean by soul pods and shadow pods.